Applications of point slope and standard form. So these are word problems with these two forms. We've done word problems with slope intercept. We just need to talk about the word problems with point slope and standard. So with point slope, we've got to remember that m is the rate of change, or simply slope. This is the rate of change. And again, those three words are per, each, and every. Those are the three words that will scream out slope to you. Then we've got to remember that x1 and y1 is a coordinate on the line. So usually you find these in word problems when they say something like, at this much, then this happens. That's kind of when you know that you have a coordinate point. So that means that whatever is here goes along with this guy. And this is usually the x value. This is the independent, this is the dependent. Okay. Then on standard form, we don't have an m. So standard form, the c value out here, this is a total of something. So like you spent a total of $20. Your gift card has a total of $100 on it. Something like that. The a and the b, so the a is actually the slope or the rate of the independent variable. This is the rate of the x variable, whatever that is. And b is the slope or the rate of the y variable. And it really doesn't matter what you call x and y in the word problem. Just make sure you are identifying what thing is x and what thing is y. So let's look at an example. So let's look at example 1. The table shows the altitude of a hot air balloon during its linear descent. What equation in point slope form gives the balloon's altitude at any time? So for point slope, I need two things. I need a rate of change and I need a coordinate on my line. So since it's a table, the coordinate is easy. Any of these pairs is a coordinate. That's a coordinate, that's one, and that's, so I can choose any of these. It really doesn't matter. The slope, however, it's going to be the same number. So my slope is going to be my y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So for slope, we're going to have to find it. So I'm just going to use the first 2 points since those are the smallest numbers on here. This will be x2, this will be y2, and we're going to plug those numbers into my formula. So I've got 590 minus 640 over my x2 of 30 minus my x1 of 10. So my slope is going to be 590 minus 640, which is negative 50, over 30 minus 10, which makes 20. So if I simplify this down, I get negative 5 over 2. So that means, and again, meaning of slope, this is the y, this is the x. I am declining 5 meters per 2 seconds, or every 2 seconds. That's what that means. So now if we have to put this into point slope form, here's the point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We can just pick any point on this table. So you've got lots of options. Your answer may not be the same as somebody else's. So I'm going to pick this point since I haven't used it yet. So this will be the x and this will be the y, x1, y1 of the equation. So we're going to do y minus, and then the y value that I chose was 490. And if I do minus a positive, it stays a minus. My m from earlier as negative 5 over 2 times x minus, and then the x1 that I chose was a 70. And that's it. That is your point slope form right there. You're done. If you chose a different point, you would have a different coordinates in here. You'd have different y's and x's, but your slope should still be the same no matter what. Now let's look at example 2. The relationship of degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius is linear. When the temperature is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it is 10 degrees Celsius. When the temperature is 77 degrees Fahrenheit, it is 25 degrees Celsius. Write an equation in point slope form giving the Celsius temperature C in terms of the Fahrenheit temperature F. Okay, so now this kind of matters which one you call what. So if I'm asking you for the Celsius temperature C in terms of the Fahrenheit temperature F, that means this is X. And this is really the y. So C is going to go in the y spot and F is going to go in the x spot. This in terms of tells you what the x variable is. So since it wanted the C in terms of Fahrenheit, that means Fahrenheit has to be the x and the first one is the y. So what your point slope form equation is now is instead of y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, we're going to use the correct variables. So in the y, we're going to replace it with a c. So C minus C1 equals M times, and instead of X, we're going to replace it with the F for Fahrenheit. F minus F1. Okay? Now, we still have to find slope. So let's see what they gave me. They told me that when the temperature is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it is 10 degrees Celsius. And they also told me that when the temperature is 77 degrees Fahrenheit, it is 25 degrees Celsius. Those are coordinates. When this happens, this happens. So my first coordinate is a 50 degrees Fahrenheit, comma, a 10 degrees Celsius. So all of my coordinates are Fahrenheit, comma, Celsius. That's what all the coordinates are in. Then the second coordinate they gave me is when the temperature is 77 degrees Fahrenheit, it is 25 degrees Celsius. So the second point that they gave me is when it is 77 degrees Fahrenheit, it is 25 degrees Celsius. So these are the two coordinates that I'm going to have to use in order to find my slope. And I can still kind of think of it as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I can still kind of think of it that way. So it's going to be this guy, 25, minus this one of 10, over this guy of 77 minus the 50 on the orange one. And then let's see, 25 minus 10 is 15, and 77 minus 50 is 7. And if I simplify this down, I can divide both of these by 3, and you end up with 5 over 9. Okay, so there's my slope. Now again, it doesn't matter which coordinate you pick, so let's just pick, let's pick this first one. Let's pick this guy. We're going to write our point slope with that. So we have C minus, so the Celsius is the 10. Keep track of what's what. The Celsius is the 10, equals my slope, which was 5/9, times the Fahrenheit, which is F, minus F1, which is 50. So here is the equation for Celsius to Fahrenheit. I want you guys to pause the video and I want you to try numbers 4 and 5. We will come back up to 3 shortly. Pause the video, try 4 and 5. And here are your solutions for example 4 and 5. So for example 4, it says the boiling point of water in terms of the altitude. So that means the boiling point is really y and the altitude is really x. So all of your coordinates are in A, comma, B. Your two coordinates, an altitude of 8,000 feet, it boils at 197. So that means this is your x because it's altitude, and this is the y because it's the boiling point. And then your other point is at an altitude of 4,500. There's your x. Water boils at 203.9. So there's your y. So these are the two coordinates you should have ended up with. Now, since it gave me two coordinates and not slope, we had to use our slope formula, find our slope. Since there's a decimal here, I went ahead and changed it into a decimal. So you should have had negative 0.0018 as your slope. And then it doesn't matter which coordinate you pick. So if you pick the orange coordinate, you get this first answer. If you pick the blue coordinate, you get the second answer. For example 5, you have to kind of think for a minute. X is the years after 2000. So your X is not 2011. Well, 2011 is 11 years after 2000, so that makes the X simply 11. If I had said in the year 2010, you would have had a 10 as the X. So be careful on what it calls your variables. Then they actually gave us the slope this time. The company's revenue has been increasing by 20,000 each year. So this 20,000 is my slope, and because it is increasing, that means it is a positive 20,000. If this had said decreasing, you would have a negative here. Now that I have the slope and a point, this is real simple. Plug in the slope and plug in your coordinate to their correct places. Now let's go back up to number 3. An online store sells songs for $1 each and movies for $12 each. If you have a total of $60 to spend, answer the questions. So letter A says define your variables. What do the X and Y represent? So with X and Y's representing things, I don't want a number. I want to know what is it actually standing for. What is it standing for? So we really just have to think about, actually I'm just going to put an arrow and I'm not going to put an equal sign. So we just have to think about what are the things, okay, if I'm spending money, what am I spending money on? Well, I'm spending it on songs and movies. Now, variables are things you don't know. I know the cost for a song, it's $1. I know the cost for a movie, it's $12. What I don't know is the number of songs that I'm buying. I also don't know the number of movies. So that's what the X and the Y are representing. The unknown thing about this problem. So Y will be the number of movies and X will be the number of songs. So letter B says, write an equation in standard form that represents the situation. This is the only place that you can write directly into standard form. And the reason is because, look, I have two slopes. I have songs for $1 each, there's a slope, and I have movies for $12 each, there's another slope. So because there are two slopes, I know that this has to be standard form. So standard form is the AX plus BY equals C. So that means the A is the rate of my X, and I called X songs. So the rate for my songs is $1. So my first part will be 1X, plus then B is the rate of my movies, my Y variable, and the rate of my movies is 12, equal to, now C is the total. Well, I only have $20 to spend. So my total then is 60. So the rate for the X plus the rate for the Y is equal to the total. Now, letter C is up here. Letter C says we're going to graph the situation on the grid. Well, graphing standard form is easiest when you find intercepts. So first, let's find the x-intercept. So for the x-intercept, remember that y is equal to 0. So we have x plus 12 times 0 equals 60. Well, 12 times 0 is nothing, so x is simply 60. So my coordinate then would be 60, 0. Now, for the y-intercept, we know that x is a 0. So we've got 0 plus 12y equals 60. And again, 12y equals 60, simply divide out the 12, and you end up with y equals 5. So my coordinate is 0, 5. So to graph this, we're going to have to kind of figure out a scale, because I don't have 60 tick marks on the x. I don't have 60 right here. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Divided into 15 pieces is actually a 4. So each one of these tick marks can be a 4. So there's my x's. Now I'm also going to label what the x's are. I said that x was number of songs. I'm going to put that down here. Number of songs, because that's my x-axis. This is the x. So for the y-axis, let's see. I only have to get up to 5. That's it. My y-intercept is a 5. So the highest I need to go is simply 5. So let's mark this by ones. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my 5 right here. So in this, again, I'm going to label this 2. This is number of movies. That's number of movies. So now that I have my scale, let's plot the points. 60, 0 here, 5, 0 here, and we easily graph a line with 2 points to connect them with a straight line. And there's the graph of this function. That's what it looks like. So everything on that line is a solution. Now letter D says, if you purchase 12 songs, how many movies can you purchase? Well, if I'm telling you you're purchasing 12 songs and I labeled songs as X, I'm telling you that X is equal to 12. And it says how many movies, I'm looking for Y. So simply plug in what you are given, this guy. So we've got 1 times 12 plus 12y, because I don't know what that is equal to 60. And we're going to solve for y. Well, 1 times 12 is just 12. So I'm going to erase the 1 in the front because I don't really need that. And then to get y alone, I have to actually subtract 12 from both sides first. So we got 12y equals 38. And now to get y alone, we're going to divide out the 12. So y is equal to a 4. Answers, we say that you can buy 4 movies. Make sure there's a unit on the number. Don't just say 4. Make sure you say 4 movies. So here was the process. We defined our variables, wrote our equations with the rates that we found in the problem and the total. We graphed it by finding the x and y intercepts. Then we plugged in a number if it asks for it and solved for the other one. So now I'd like you to take a minute and try number 6. So let's together define our variables. So define the variables. In a video game, you earn 5 points for each jewel you find. You earn 2 points for each star you find. You must earn 250 points in order to move on to the next level. So first off, because I see two slope words, each and each, that tells me that this has to be standard form. If you ever have two slope words, two rate words, it has to be standard. And so let's see, X is and Y is. So the things we're trying to find is we're trying to find jewels and we're trying to find stars. And again, each jewel and each star. Find those rate words and that will help you find your variables. So what do we know about the jewels? I know that they're 5 points. I know that they're 5 points and I must earn 250 points in order to move on. So the question is, how many jewels am I finding? Because I have the point values, I just don't know how many. So that means X will be the number of jewels. And similarly for the stars, I know their points, but I don't know how many. So Y will be the number of stars. So pause the video and try to write the equation in standard form and then check and see if you got it right. Here's the standard form of your equation. 5x plus 2y equals 250. So 250 is the total amount of points you need to move on. And so the rate for my x, the rate for the jewels is 5 points each. The rate for the y is 2, the 2 points for each star. Now try letter C. Find your intercepts and graph on the grid. Make sure you choose a good scale, pause the video, and then unpause when you finish letter C. And here's the answer for letter C. So you should have had an x-intercept of 50, a y-intercept of 125. And so in order to make 50 fit on 15 lines, I had to use 4s again. You don't always use 4s. But if I tried to use something like 10s, this would have been 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and my graph would have been really, really kind of condensed down. So spread it out as much as you can along the axis. And so for the y's, I had to get up to 125, and so I chose 10s, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And so that way this is 125, right between 120 and 130. Plot your points, connect your line. Pause the video, see if you can try letter D. Here's your answer for letter D. If yours says you're able to find 15 stars, because I called the y value the stars, that means this has got to be the y value of 15. How many jewels means I don't know the number of jewels still, so that means x is still a variable. So plug in the 15 in for y, solve it down, and you get 44. Make sure you put a unit on the back of 44. Don't just give me 44. Make sure you end your word problems in words. Word problems always end in words.